The emergency session alarm had been blaring for 3 standard hours, which meant the Galactic Council was either facing complete annihilation or someone had spilled caffeinated stimulant on the control panel again. Given recent events, Council Leader Vextara was betting on annihilation. "Order! Order!" she bellowed, her forearms waving frantically as representatives from 12 different species argued in 17 different languages. The cacophony was giving her a migraine in 3 of her 4 brain lobes, which was actually an improvement from yesterday's session about trade regulations. "If I may have your attention," Vextara continued, activating the universal translator to maximum volume. "We are here to discuss what our intelligence division has tactfully labeled as the human problem." The chamber fell silent. Even the Zephyrians stopped their incessant chittering, which was saying something because those insectoids literally couldn't breathe without making noise. Counselor Blackston, a towering crystalline being who looked like someone had given a chandelier a law degree, spoke first. "Remind me again why a species that discovered fire roughly 5 minutes ago in galactic terms is considered a problem." Vextara activated the holographic display with a sigh that resonated through all 4 of her respiratory chambers. "Because, Counselor, these primitive humans have managed to establish colonies in 47 star systems in the past century. 47! Systems that we classified as uninhabitable deathworlds." "Perhaps they simply have good environmental suits," suggested Counselor Meep, whose own species required climate-controlled bubbles just to survive in standard atmospheric conditions. "No suits," Vextara replied, pulling up the surveillance footage. "They terraform these worlds by the simple expedient of showing up and refusing to die. Our xenobiologists are having nervous breakdowns trying to figure out how they survive on planets where the rain is literally acid and the wildlife considers starship hulls a light snack." The footage showed humans doing things that should have been physically impossible. Humans lifting objects that weighed twice their body mass. Humans surviving in environments that would liquefy most council species. Humans domesticating creatures that the galactic database listed as approach with orbital bombardment only. "There's more," Vextara continued, because apparently the universe had a sense of humor and it was particularly dark today. "They've started what they call cultural exchange programs with our member species. 3 different civilizations have already reported that their young adults have begun exhibiting human behavioral patterns." "Which are?" Blackston asked, though his crystalline structure was already dimming with dread. "Curiosity, optimism, an inexplicable urge to hug dangerous creatures and call them good boys." The silence that followed could have been weaponized. "This is why," Vextara announced with the air of someone unveiling a masterpiece, "we are implementing Solution Gamma." "Which is," Counselor Meep squeaked. "We capture a specimen for study. Not just any specimen, mind you. We need to understand what makes these creatures tick before they accidentally adopt our entire galaxy into their social structure." It was Blackston who asked the obvious question. "Who exactly do you propose we send to capture a human? Our best military units report that attempting to subdue them results in what humans apparently call a fun workout." Vextara's smile could have powered a small space station. "I've already contacted the perfect candidate, someone who's never failed a hunt, someone who considers entire species nothing more than interesting trophies. Someone who—" The chamber doors hissed open, interrupting her dramatic build-up in a way that would have made lesser politicians weep. What entered wasn't so much walking as it was flowing, like death had learned to move with purpose. 8 feet of scaled muscle, 4 arms ending in claws that could probably open a can or disembowel a space whale with equal efficiency, and eyes that suggested its owner had seen the heat death of the universe and considered it mildly entertaining. "Cathor," Vextara said, trying to regain her dramatic momentum. "Thank you for coming." The bounty hunter's voice sounded like gravel being processed in a cement mixer that had developed opinions about mortality. "You mentioned payment. Standard rates for specimen acquisition?" "Triple rates," Vextara confirmed. "The target species may present unique challenges." Cathor's laugh was the sound nightmares made when they wanted to scare each other. "I have hunted creatures across 6 galaxies. I have captured beings that exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously. I once brought back a creature made entirely of aggressive quantum uncertainty." He gestured with one of his 4 arms in what might have been dismissive confidence or a threat. "What could these soft, slow humans possibly do that would qualify as challenging?" The council members exchanged looks that suggested they were collectively having second thoughts about this plan, their species' survival instincts, and their career choices. "Excellent," Vextara said, because at this point she was committed to this course of action the way a meteor is committed to impact. Bring us back a human specimen. Alive, preferably, but we understand these things can be complicated. Cathor's grin revealed teeth that evolution had clearly designed with violence in mind. It will be the easiest hunt of my career. As he left the chamber, none of the council members mentioned that their research had uncovered one particularly disturbing fact about humans. They had an almost pathological tendency to befriend anything that didn't immediately try to kill them. And sometimes, even the things that did. 3 days later, Cathor's stealth ship hung in the shadow of an asteroid, watching the human colony vessel drift through space like a particularly slow and defenseless meal. The ship was called the New Horizons, which struck him as optimistic considering their horizons were about to become significantly more limited. He'd done his research, naturally. Humans were bipedal mammals, averaged around 6 feet in height, and possessed the kind of fragile bone structure that suggested evolution had been having an off day. They had no natural armor, no claws worth mentioning, and their sensory capabilities were so limited they couldn't even see properly in the dark. This would be like hunting a particularly chatty plant. The colony ship had stopped for routine maintenance near a mining station, which meant their security would be focused outward on potential pirate threats, not on apex predators materializing inside their vessel. Cathor activated his personal cloaking device and teleported directly into what his scans had identified as a low-traffic corridor. He materialized in what appeared to be a recreational area, all soft colors and rounded edges like the humans were afraid their own furniture might injure them. Pathetic. His thermal sensors immediately picked up a single heat signature moving through the adjacent corridor. Perfect. One isolated human, probably lost or wandering where they shouldn't be. Cathor moved with the fluid silence of a creature that had perfected the art of being death's personal delivery service. He rounded the corner, all 4 arms ready to subdue his prey with minimal damage to the specimen, and came face to face with his target. It was approximately 3 feet tall. "Oh wow!" the tiny human exclaimed, and Cathor realized with growing horror that he was looking at what humans called a child. "Are you an alien? You look like a really cool dinosaur. Are those real claws?" Cathor's brain, which had successfully processed threats from creatures across multiple galaxies, came to a complete stop. The small human was staring at him with what could only be described as delight, bouncing on her feet in excitement. "I mean," she continued, apparently unbothered by his shocked silence, "Mom says I shouldn't talk to strangers, but you're not really a stranger if you're an alien, right? That's like first contact. I'm Emma. What's your name?" "I am," Cathor began, then stopped. In 300 years of hunting, no prey had ever asked for his name. Most of them were too busy screaming or running, or occasionally exploding. "I am Cathor the Destroyer." "That's a really long name," Emma said thoughtfully. "Can I call you Mr. Scary? You look scary, but like the fun kind of scary, like a monster in a movie that's actually nice." "I am not nice," Cathor managed, his voice sounding uncertain even to himself. "I am a hunter, a killer of worlds, the shadow that stalks the void between stars." Emma nodded seriously. "That sounds like a really cool job. Do you like it? I want to be a xenobiologist when I grow up. That means I study aliens. Are you here to be studied? Oh, are you hungry? I have juice boxes." Before Cathor could process this information overload, the small human had produced what appeared to be a container of liquid and was offering it to him with both hands. "It's apple flavor," she explained helpfully. "Mom says sharing is caring and you look like you might be thirsty. Space travel is probably really hard work." Cathor stared at the offering. In his entire career, prey had offered him many things: bribes, information, desperate pleas for mercy, occasionally religious artifacts they thought might protect them. Never apple juice. "You are not afraid," he observed, still trying to wrap his mind around this development. "Should I be?" Emma asked, tilting her head. "I mean, you haven't hurt me or anything. And Dad always says you can tell if someone's really mean by how they treat people smaller than them. You could probably eat me if you wanted to, but you're just standing there talking, so I figure you're probably okay." "I could indeed consume you," Cathor agreed slowly. "But you won't, right?" Emma said with the kind of absolute confidence that suggested she had never encountered a universe where bad things happened to small humans. "Because that would be mean, and you don't seem mean. Scary, sure, but not mean scary. More like protective scary." Cathor felt something in his worldview beginning to crack. "Protective?" "Yeah, like my dad when someone's bothering Mom. He gets this look that says, I will end you, but only to protect us. You've got that same look, except maybe a little more, she gestured vaguely at his claws and teeth, more equipped for the ending part. The hunter who had tracked creatures across galaxies found himself completely outmaneuvered by 30 pounds of human child armed with fruit juice and an apparently unshakable belief in the goodness of the universe. Are you lost? Emma asked, because apparently his existential crisis wasn't moving fast enough for her 8-year-old attention span. I'm kinda lost too. I was supposed to be in the playroom, but I saw these really cool lights outside and wanted to get a better look, and now I don't remember which way I came from. And that, Cathor realized with dawning horror, was when everything went completely sideways. 20 minutes later, Cathor found himself in what could only be described as the most surreal situation of his 3-century career. He was walking through the corridors of a human vessel, accompanied by a small human who had somehow decided he was her new best friend and tour guide. And this is the hydroponics bay, Emma announced, pointing to a door with the enthusiasm of a seasoned diplomat. That's where we grow food in space. Mom says it's like magic, but with science. Do you eat regular food or do you have to hunt for everything? I typically consume the life force of my enemies, Cathor replied automatically, then wondered why he was answering her questions at all. That sounds really inefficient, Emma said thoughtfully. What if you don't have any enemies that day? Do you just go hungry? The question was so practical that Cathor actually considered it seriously. I create enemies as needed. That seems like extra work. You should try sandwiches, way easier. They passed a viewport showing the starfield beyond, and Emma immediately pressed her face against the transparent aluminum. Look how pretty it is. Daddy says there might be millions of civilizations out there, all doing their own thing. Isn't that cool? We're probably not even the weirdest ones. Cathor looked out at the same view that had been the backdrop for countless hunts and realized he had never once considered it pretty. It was simply terrain, navigation hazards, the void between prey. Do you have a family, Mr. Scary? Emma asked, apparently unaware that she had just asked the galaxy's most feared hunter about his personal life. I am a solitary hunter, he replied stiffly. It said, sounds lonely. Don't you get bored? I mean, I get bored just on the trip to the new colony, and that's only 6 months. How long have you been by yourself? 300 years, Cathor said, then immediately wondered why he'd answered honestly. Emma stopped walking and stared up at him with what he was beginning to recognize as her processing something important expression. That's really long. Are you sad? The question hit him like a plasma torpedo to the central processing unit. In 3 centuries, no one had ever asked if he was sad. Afraid, certainly. Angry, often. Desperate to escape, constantly. But sad? I do not experience sadness, he said, which was probably true but felt oddly hollow. Oh, Emma said, then brightened immediately. Well, you're not alone now. I'm here and I'm really good company. Mom says I could make friends with a black hole if I tried hard enough. Before Cathor could explain that black holes were not suitable for friendship, Emma had spotted something else that captured her attention. Ooh, nap pods, she exclaimed, pointing to a row of what his scanners identified as emergency rest chambers. I'm getting sleepy. Space travel is exhausting. Do you want to take a nap with me? I do not require rest, Cathor began, but Emma was already climbing into one of the pods. Everyone needs rest, silly. Even scary space hunters. Come on, there's room for 2 if you curl up your extra arms. And that was how Cathor the Destroyer, terror of 12 galaxies, found himself crammed into a rest pod, designed for creatures half his size, watching a small human settle down for what she called quiet time. This is nice, Emma mumbled, already half asleep. It's like having a big, scary guardian angel. I'm not a guardian, Cathor protested quietly, but Emma was already drifting off. That's when his proximity sensors detected movement in the corridor outside, multiple heat signatures, moving with the deliberate patterns of a search party. But not human signatures. These were Skreath pirates, judging by their bio readings, probably here for the same reason he was, drawn by reports of an easy-target human vessel. Cathor's instincts kicked in immediately. He had 2 options. He could leave the sleeping human and complete his original mission, using the distraction of the pirate attack to escape with his specimen. Or, he looked down at Emma, who had somehow managed to curl up against his armored side like he was an oversized stuffed animal. She was completely vulnerable, trusting him absolutely despite having known him for less than an hour. The Skreath were getting closer. He could hear their chittering communication getting louder. Well, Cathor muttered to himself, this is definitely not how I plan to spend my Tuesday. He carefully extracted himself from the pod, making sure not to wake Emma, and positioned himself between the sleeping child and the corridor entrance. His claws extended with a soft snick that would have made his prey wet themselves in terror. The first Screeth rounded the corner and found itself face to face with 8 feet of very annoyed apex predator. "You picked the wrong ship," Cathor growled, and discovered that protecting something felt remarkably different from hunting it. The fight was brief, efficient, and conducted in the kind of silence that suggested someone who really didn't want to wake up a sleeping 8-year-old. When it was over, Cathor found himself standing over 3 unconscious pirates, wondering when exactly he had started thinking of Emma as his human to protect. "Mr. Scary," came a sleepy voice from the pod. "Is everything okay? I heard some noise." "Everything is fine, small one," Cathor said, quickly concealing the evidence of his recent activities. "Go back to sleep." "Okay," Emma yawned. "Thanks for keeping me safe." And that, Cathor realized with something approaching panic, was the moment he stopped being a hunter and started being whatever it was humans turned you into when they decided you belonged to their pack. The next morning, if you could call it morning in the eternal night of space, Emma woke up with the kind of boundless energy that suggested human children were powered by small fusion reactors. "Good morning, Mr. Scary," she chirped, apparently unbothered by the fact that she was addressing a creature that most species used as the subject of their worst nightmares. "Did you sleep okay? You're really warm, like a big scaly heating pad." Cathor, who had spent the night in a state of hypervigilance while simultaneously serving as a pillow, made a noise that might have been agreement. "You are surprisingly comfortable to rest with, small human." "Emma," she corrected cheerfully. "And of course I am. Mom says humans are naturally good at sharing space. We evolved as pack hunters, so we're really good at sleeping in piles." "Pack hunters." The words hit Cathor like a revelation delivered by orbital bombardment. "Tell me about your parents," he said, trying to keep his voice casual while his worldview underwent structural renovations. "Oh, they're awesome," Emma said, producing what appeared to be preserved food from somewhere in her clothing. "Want some jerky? It's made from beef. That's from cows, which are these really big animals we keep on Earth for food. They're like 1,000 pounds each and we just keep them around." Cathor accepted the offering automatically, his mind still processing. "You domesticate creatures that weigh 1,000 pounds? "Oh sure, tons of stuff. Cows, horses, pigs. Mom grew up on a ranch where they kept these things called bulls that are basically just angry beef with horns. She used to ride them for fun." "For fun?" "Yeah, it's called bull riding. You get on the angry beef and try not to fall off while it tries to kill you. Mom was really good at it until she met Dad and decided she wanted to do something less dangerous." "Less dangerous than riding creatures that try to kill you?" "Yeah, she became a combat engineer. That's way safer because you only get shot at by pirates and stuff, not stomped by livestock." Cathor felt something fundamental shifting in his understanding of reality. "Your mother fights pirates?" "Well, yeah. Someone has to fix the ship when bad guys shoot holes in it. Last month she had to fight off some Corvan raiders with nothing but a plasma torch and some really creative swearing. Dad was so proud." "And your father?" Emma's face lit up like a small star. "Dad's a xenobiologist. That's why we're going to the new colony. He studies alien life forms to see which ones might be friendly and which ones are dangerous. He's really good at it because he used to be in the Colonial Marines." "Marines," Cathor repeated weakly. "Yep, he was a sergeant in the Titan campaign. That's where he met Mom, actually. She was fixing their ship while it was under fire, and Dad was holding off these big spider crab things so she could work. He says it was love at first firefight." Cathor's understanding of human civilians was undergoing rapid and uncomfortable updates. "Your parents met in combat?" "Uh-huh. Oh, and guess what? Dad once arm wrestled a Gorblox champion and won. Can you believe that? A human beating a Gorblox at arm wrestling. Dad says it's all about leverage and not giving up, but I think humans might just be stronger than everyone thinks." The Gorblox were 8-foot-tall crystalline beings with muscle density that could crush most materials. The fact that a human had defeated one in a contest of strength suggested that everything the galaxy thought it knew about human physical capabilities was catastrophically wrong. "Emma," Cathor said carefully, "tell me about Earth." "Oh, Earth is beautiful," Emma said, settling in for what was clearly going to be a detailed explanation. "It's got all these different environments. We've got deserts where the temperature can kill you, and jungles full of creatures that want to eat you, and oceans with animals so big they're like living islands. And mountains that touch the sky, and ice caps that are so cold your breath turns solid. And humans live in all these places? Not just live there, we love it. We go to the deadly desert for vacations. We swim in oceans with sharks. Those are like swimming knives with teeth. We climb the killer mountains for fun. Dad says humans are the only species that looks at a hostile environment and thinks, I should build a house there. Cathor was beginning to understand why the Galactic Council was terrified. Oh, and we keep some of the dangerous animals as pets, Emma continued happily. We've got these things called dogs that are descended from wolves, and cats that are basically tiny murder machines, but they're super cuddly. My neighbor had a snake that could squeeze the life out of you, and he called it Mr. Hugs. You domesticate predators? Well, yeah, anything can be a friend if you're nice to it and give it enough snacks. That's probably why you're so nice, Mr. Scary. You just needed someone to share their jerky with you. Cathor looked down at the preserved meat he was still holding, and realized with growing horror that she was right. The small human had, through the simple expedient of being kind and sharing food, somehow convinced a galactic apex predator to become her personal guardian in less than 24 hours. Emma, he said slowly, how many humans are on your colony ship? About 10,000. We're going to start a whole new world. Dad says it'll be great because the planet we're going to has all these interesting creatures that nobody's studied yet. Some of them are supposedly really dangerous. But Dad says that just means they'll be fun to figure out. 10,000 humans, heading toward a world full of dangerous creatures that they'd planned to study, befriend, and probably domesticate. Cathor felt a migraine developing in his tertiary brain. The best part, Emma continued, is that Mom and Dad say I can help with the research when we get there. I'm really good with animals. I think it's because I don't assume they're scary just because they look different. She smiled up at him with complete trust and affection, and Cathor realized he was looking at the most dangerous creature in the galaxy. Not because she could destroy worlds, but because she could make anything want to protect the worlds she lived on. It was during what Emma called adventure time that Cathor discovered the true horror of human children. They weren't just fearless, they had an active radar for danger, and an unshakable belief that everything in the universe was either a friend they hadn't met yet, or a problem that could be solved with sufficient application of optimism and snacks. Hoo-coo, proximity alarms, Emma said cheerfully as red lights began flashing throughout the corridor. That usually means something exciting is about to happen. Cathor's enhanced hearing picked up the distinctive whine of Vorthan raider engines closing in on the colony ship. The Vorthans were notorious for their brutality and their habit of taking prisoners for their arena fights. They were also, he realized with growing dread, about to encounter their first human child. Emma, he said carefully, we need to find somewhere safe for you to hide. Hide? Emma looked genuinely confused. Why would I hide? Are we playing a game? No, small one, there are dangerous beings approaching this vessel, beings who would hurt you. Emma's expression shifted, and for a moment Cathor glimpsed something that made his predator instincts sit up and take notice. It wasn't fear. It was the calculating look of a creature assessing a threat to its pack. Ailey, wanna hurt my friends? She asked, her voice taking on a tone he hadn't heard before. The people on this ship? Well, that's not very nice of them, Emma said, and somehow managed to make those words sound more ominous than any battle cry Cathor had ever heard. I think we should explain to them why that's a bad idea. Before he could stop her, Emma had marched over to the nearest communication panel and somehow activated the ship-wide intercom. Her small voice echoed through every corridor of the massive vessel. Hi everyone, this is Emma Rodriguez in Section C7. We've got some unfriendly visitors coming and they want to hurt people. Could all the grown-ups please make sure everyone's safe? And maybe someone could explain to the mean aliens that we don't like bullies? Thanks. The simplicity of her announcement belied what Cathor recognized as a perfectly executed tactical communication. She had identified the threat, warned the entire ship, and effectively declared war, all while sounding like she was organizing a school field trip. There, she said, turning back to him with satisfaction. Now everyone knows what's happening. That's when the first explosion rocked the ship, and Cathor watched in fascination as Emma's entire demeanor shifted into something that would have made a Terran military instructor proud. Okay, Mr. Scary, she said, her voice calm and focused in a way that suggested extensive emergency training. The bad guys are probably going to try to board the ship near the docking bays. We need to get to the central hub where the other kids are, because that's where the grown-ups will make their stand. Can you carry me? I'm faster if I don't have to use my own legs. Kythor found himself obeying without question, scooping Emma up in two of his arms while keeping the other two free for combat. She settled against him with the ease of someone who had clearly done this before. "Take the maintenance corridors," she directed, pointing toward a service hatch. "They're faster, and the bad guys won't know about them. Turn left at the third junction, then straight until you hit the emergency bulkhead." "How do you know the ship's layout so well?" Kythor asked as he followed her directions with the fluid grace of a creature born to hunt in tight spaces. "Dad made me memorize all the emergency routes on the first day," Emma replied matter-of-factly. "He says preparation is the difference between adventure and disaster. Oh, and if we run into any bad guys, don't worry about being gentle. Mom says sometimes you have to be mean to mean people to protect nice people." They moved through the maintenance corridors with surprising efficiency, Emma providing navigation while Kythor's senses tracked the movement of Vorthan raiders through the main ship. What he'd discovered made his estimation of human tactical awareness undergo another radical revision. Emma wasn't just giving him directions, she was coordinating their movement to avoid the boarding parties, while simultaneously positioning them to intercept any raiders who might threaten the civilian areas. She was thinking 3 moves ahead, and she was 8 years old. "There," she whispered, pointing through a ventilation grate. 3 of them, heading toward the family quarters. They've got those shock weapons that are supposed to knock people out for easy capture." Kythor looked through the grate and saw 3 Vorthan raiders moving with the confident swagger of predators who assumed they were hunting prey. They had no idea they were about to encounter something that would redefine their understanding of the food chain. "Stay here," he told Emma. "This will only take a moment." "Wait," Emma said, grabbing his arm. "Don't kill them if you don't have to. Dad says taking a life should always be the last option, not the first one." Kythor stared at her. Even in the middle of combat, even when protecting her family, she was concerned about the welfare of beings who had come to hurt them. It was either the most naive thing he had ever heard, or the most sophisticated understanding of power he had ever encountered. "I will be restrained," he promised. What followed was less a fight than a masterclass in non-lethal subduing techniques. Kythor dropped through the grate behind the raiders and disabled all 3 of them before they could even turn around. It was precise, efficient, and conducted with the kind of professional courtesy that suggested he was a craftsman proud of his work. "Nice job," Emma said, dropping down beside him with the kind of casual fearlessness that made Kythor's species preservation instincts scream. "You didn't even mess up their armor too much. The security team will be able to use their equipment for evidence. You are not concerned that I just engaged in violence in front of you?" Emma considered this seriously. "Dad says violence is a tool, like any other tool. The important thing is only using it when you have to, and only using as much as you need. You protected my family, and you didn't hurt them more than necessary. That's good tool use." The casual way she discussed combat ethics while stepping over unconscious raiders suggested that human children received a level of tactical and moral education that most species reserved for their elite military units. "Emma," Kythor said slowly, "how often do things like this happen on human ships?" "Oh, pirate attacks. Maybe once or twice a year. Space is dangerous, so we have to be ready for dangerous stuff. Dad says the universe is full of bullies, but it's also full of people worth protecting, so you have to be ready to deal with both." As if summoned by her words, the sound of coordinated human voices echoed through the corridors. Not screaming or panicking, but the calm, professional communication of people who had trained for exactly this scenario. "Sounds like the grown-ups have everything under control," Emma said with satisfaction. "They're really good at handling problems. Come on, let's go make sure everyone's okay." As they made their way toward the central hub, Kythor realized something that filled him with a mixture of awe and existential terror. Emma hadn't been the one being protected during this encounter. She had been protecting him. Not from physical harm, but from having to make the hard choices. She had given him permission to use violence while setting moral boundaries. She had provided tactical guidance while ensuring he understood the ethical framework. She had, in essence, managed him through his first encounter with human pack dynamics. An 8-year-old human had just demonstrated that she was more tactically sophisticated, morally grounded, and strategically aware than most beings he had hunted across 6 galaxies. And she had done it while making sure everyone, even the bad guys, got treated fairly. "Mr. Scary," Emma said, looking up at him with those impossibly trusting eyes. "Are you okay? You look like you're thinking really hard about something." "I am beginning to understand," Kythor replied, "why the galaxy should be very, very afraid of your species." Emma giggled. "That's silly, we're not scary, we're just really good at making friends." Which was, Kythor realized, exactly what made them the most terrifying force in the universe. The return journey to the Galactic Council chambers felt different this time. Cathor's stealth ship hummed through hyperspace while Emma slept peacefully in the passenger seat he had hastily installed, clutching a stuffed animal she had introduced as Mr. Fluffington, and occasionally murmuring things like, "The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell," in her sleep. Educational dreams. Because of course human children had educational dreams. Cathor had spent the 3-day journey trying to compose a report that would adequately convey the magnitude of the Council's miscalculation. How do you explain to 12 different species that they had fundamentally misunderstood the nature of the threat they were facing? How do you tell beings who had ruled the galaxy for millennia that they were about to be adopted? The Council chambers looked exactly the same as when he had left them, but Cathor now saw them through Emma's eyes. The imposing architecture designed to intimidate would probably remind her of a museum. The carefully calculated lighting, meant to inspire awe, would make her ask if they had considered more energy-efficient options. The representatives themselves, arranged in their species-specific environmental suits and threatening poses, would be classified as new friends who probably needed hugs. "Cathor!" Vextara's voice boomed across the chamber as the doors hissed open. "You have returned, and you have brought the specimen." The entire council fell silent as Cathor entered, carrying a sleeping 8-year-old human who was somehow managing to look adorable while drooling slightly on his armored shoulder. "This is your captured human?" Councillor Blackston's crystalline structure flickered with confusion. "It appears to be diminutive." "And defective," added Councillor Meep, his climate bubble wobbling nervously. "It's leaking fluids." "She is not defective," Cathor said, his voice carrying a dangerous edge that made several councillors take a step back. "She is sleeping. Human juveniles require extensive rest to process the tactical information they acquire during their waking hours." "Tactical information?" Vextar repeated. Before Cathor could answer, Emma stirred in his arms, yawning and blinking at the assembled representatives with the kind of sleepy confusion that made her look even more harmless than usual. "Are we there yet, Mr. Scary?" she mumbled, then noticed their audience. Her entire demeanor shifted to what Cathor now recognized as her meeting new people mode. "Oh, hello. Are you Mr. Scary's friends?" The silence that followed could have been used to calibrate sensitive instruments. "I am Council Leader Vextara," came the eventual response, delivered in the kind of carefully controlled tone usually reserved for diffusing explosive devices. "You are the human specimen." "I'm Emma," she said brightly, apparently unbothered by being referred to as a specimen. "Are you in charge here? This place is really cool. It's like a big space United Nations, except with more tentacles and glowing bits." "United Nations?" Blackson inquired. "Oh, that's how humans organized our planet before we went to space," Emma explained helpfully. "Lots of different groups with different ideas, all trying to work together and make decisions that are good for everyone. It's really hard, but super important." The council members exchanged glances that suggested this information was filing itself under reasons to be concerned. "You see," Emma continued, warming to her subject in the way that made Cathor's protective instincts activate, "Dad says the trick to good government is making sure everyone gets heard, but also making sure that the people who want to hurt others don't get to make the rules. It's all about balance." "Your father studies government?" Vextara asked weakly. "Oh no, he studies aliens, but he says understanding how societies work is part of understanding how species work. You can't really know a creature unless you know how it lives with other creatures. That's why humans are so good at making friends. We've had lots of practice working with people who are different from us." Cathor watched the council's expressions shift from confusion to dawning horror as they began to process the implications. "Speaking of friends," Emma said, looking around the chamber with obvious delight, "you're all so interesting. Is that really water you're floating in, or is it some kind of special fluid? And wow, are those actual crystals growing out of your body, or is that like decorative armor? Oh, and you have so many arms. That must be super convenient." What followed was perhaps the most surreal 15 minutes in Galactic Council history, as Emma systematically charmed her way through the assembled representatives with the kind of genuine curiosity and enthusiasm that was apparently impossible to resist. She asked thoughtful questions about their biology, their cultures, and their planets, listened to the answers with obvious fascination, and managed to make each species feel like they were the most interesting beings she had ever encountered. Which, Cathor realized, they probably were. To Emma, every new creature was a friend waiting to happen, and a puzzle waiting to be solved. "This is all very pleasant," Vextara eventually managed, But we brought you here to study you, young human, to understand what makes your species so adaptable. Oh, that's easy, Emma said. We're really good at learning stuff, and we like helping our friends, and we don't give up when things get hard. Plus, we're kind of stubborn, which Mom says is actually a survival trait even though it drives her crazy. But, surely, Counselor Meep interjected, your species must have some weakness, some limitation that prevents you from expanding indefinitely? Emma considered this seriously. Well, we're not very good at being mean to each other for very long. We keep trying to fix problems instead of just fighting about them. And we have this weird thing where we adopt everything as family, even when it's probably not a good idea. She looked up at Cathor with obvious affection. Like how I adopted Mr. Scary here. He came to capture me, but now we're best friends and he's going to make sure I get home safely. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Capture you, Vextara repeated slowly. Oh yeah, Emma said casually. He told me he was a hunter and that he was supposed to bring back a human specimen for you to study, but then we became friends, and friends don't kidnap friends. That would be rude. Cathor felt every weapon system in the chamber powering up as the council representatives suddenly understood exactly how catastrophically their plan had backfired. So instead, Emma continued cheerfully, I decided to come visit you myself. I've never seen a galactic government before, and Mr. Scary said you were really important and probably very smart. Though I have to say, sending someone to kidnap a kid seems like a pretty silly way to learn about humans. You could have just asked nicely. We like sharing information with friends. The silence that followed was broken by what sounded suspiciously like Counselor Blackston whimpering. But don't worry, Emma added brightly. I'm not mad about the whole kidnapping thing. Everyone makes mistakes, and Mr. Scary explained that you were probably just scared because you didn't understand humans very well. Fear makes people do silly things sometimes. Scared? Vextaro's voice cracked slightly. We are not scared of your species. Emma's expression shifted to what Cathor had learned to recognize as her dispensing uncomfortable truths look. It was remarkably similar to her father's expression when explaining why certain research approaches were doomed to failure. But you are scared, she said gently. That's why you sent Mr. Scary to capture one of us instead of just asking to meet us. That's why you're all sitting so far away and asking questions about our weaknesses. You're scared because we're different, and you don't know if we're going to be friends or enemies. She hopped down from Cathor's arms and walked toward the center of the chamber, her small voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence. The thing is, we don't want to be enemies with anyone. We want to be friends with everyone, even the scary ones like Mr. Scary here. But we're also really, really good at protecting our friends when someone tries to hurt them. Emma's voice maintained its cheerful 8-year-old cadence, but something in her posture had shifted. Cathor recognized it from their encounter with the pirates, the moment when a human child revealed the tactical awareness that their species had been developing for millennia. So here's what's probably going to happen, Emma continued conversationally. My parents are looking for me right now, and when I say my parents, I mean my parents, and about 10,000 of their closest friends, because that's how humans work. We don't just protect our own kids. We protect all the kids, and we really don't like it when someone tries to take them away. The council members were beginning to look genuinely terrified, which Emma apparently noticed, because her expression immediately softened with concern. But hey, that's okay. Because I'm here, and I'm safe, and Mr. Scary took really good care of me. So when Mom and Dad show up, I'll explain that you were just confused about how to make friends with humans, and everything will be fine. Where they show up, Vextara whispered. Oh, probably any minute now, Emma said cheerfully. Dad's really good at tracking, and Mom's really good at opening doors that people don't want opened. Plus, they brought some friends from the Colonial Marines to help with the looking. As if summoned by her words, the chamber's proximity alarms began blaring with the kind of urgency usually reserved for incoming antimatter warheads. Attention, Galactic Council, came a voice over the communication system, speaking in the kind of calm, professional tone that suggested extensive military training and absolutely no patience for nonsense. This is Colonel Marcus Rodriguez of the Terran Colonial Forces. You have something that belongs to us. We'd like it back. Emma beamed with pride. That's my dad. He's probably brought Mom, too. She's the one who will be bypassing your security systems right about now. The lights flickered as something very powerful interfaced with the station's main computer core. Found you, baby girl, came another voice, this one carrying the kind of affectionate warmth that somehow made the casual display of technical superiority even more terrifying. Mama's coming to get you. Hi, Mom, Emma called out cheerfully. I'm okay. I made friends. Thor watched as the most powerful governing body in the galaxy came to the collective realization that they had not captured a human child for study. They had accidentally kidnapped the daughter of two of the most dangerous humans in space. And those humans had just arrived with what sounded like a significant portion of the Terran military to collect her. "Emma, sweetie," came her father's voice, now much closer and accompanied by the sound of blast doors being systematically bypassed. "Are you hurt?" "Nope, Mr. Scary took really good care of me. Oh, and I learned lots of interesting stuff about galactic politics." The chamber doors, which were supposed to be impregnable, opened with a soft hiss. What walked through was Thor's first look at adult humans in their natural element, and it was genuinely educational. Colonel Rodriguez was tall, calm, and moved with the kind of fluid precision that suggested he could probably disassemble the entire chamber with his bare hands if necessary. Dr. Rodriguez was shorter, but carried herself with the kind of confident competence that made it clear she could rebuild anything her husband took apart, probably while under fire. Behind them, visible through the open doorway, stood what appeared to be a significant portion of the Terran colonial marines, all looking like they were having a perfectly pleasant day, and would be happy to demonstrate various creative applications of military hardware if required. "Emma," Dr. Rodriguez said, her voice full of relief as she scooped her daughter into a hug. "We were so worried." "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't mean to get lost. But look, I made a new friend." Emma gestured proudly toward Thor, who suddenly found himself being evaluated by two sets of very intelligent, very protective human eyes. "You must be the bounty hunter," Colonel Rodriguez said, his tone perfectly polite and absolutely terrifying. "Thank you for keeping our daughter safe." "It was..." Thor began, then stopped. "How do you explain to armed parents that you had originally intended to kidnap their child?" "It was my honor." Dr. Rodriguez studied him with the kind of analytical gaze that probably made alien specimens feel like they were being catalogued. "Emma says you're friends now. She has a remarkable ability to form social bonds," Thor managed. "That's our girl," Colonel Rodriguez said proudly. "Makes friends everywhere she goes." He turned to address the council, and his smile was the kind that suggested extensive experience in negotiations where failure was not an option. "So," he said pleasantly, "I understand there was some confusion about how to establish diplomatic contact with humanity. Emma, why don't you tell Mom and Dad what happened?" What followed was perhaps the most diplomatically devastating briefing in galactic history, delivered by an 8-year-old who managed to make the Council's actions sound less like an act of war and more like the kind of social misunderstanding that happened when people didn't know how to ask for help properly. By the time Emma finished explaining, the Council members looked like they were contemplating the benefits of voluntary extinction. "Well," Dr. Rodriguez said when Emma was done, "it sounds like there was just a communication problem. That's easily fixed." "Very easily," Colonel Rodriguez agreed. "We're always happy to talk to new neighbors." The word neighbors somehow managed to sound both friendly and ominous. "In fact," Dr. Rodriguez continued, "I think this could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Emma's told you about human culture, and you've shared your government structure with her. That's exactly how good relationships start." "Of course," Colonel Rodriguez added, "good relationships are built on mutual respect and understanding. Emma mentioned that you were curious about human capabilities." The threat hung in the air like a sword made of politeness and barely contained violence. "Perhaps," Vextara managed, "we could arrange for more formal diplomatic exchanges with proper protocols." "That sounds wonderful," Emma said brightly. "I could help. I'm really good at introducing people to each other." And that, Thor realized, was how the galaxy learned that humans didn't conquer civilizations, they adopted them. And once you were part of a human family, hurting any member of that family meant dealing with all of them. As the Rodriguez family prepared to leave, Emma turned back to wave at the council members who had tried to kidnap her. "Bye, everyone. Thanks for letting me visit. Mr. Scary has my contact information if you want to set up play dates." The council watched in stunned silence as the most dangerous family in the galaxy departed, leaving behind a chamber full of beings who were just beginning to understand that the age of galactic civilization as they knew it was over. Humanity hadn't invaded their galaxy. Humanity had just moved into the neighborhood. And they were very, very good neighbors. As long as you didn't mess with their kids.